Jasper resided in a tranquil home at the town's periphery. An elderly gentleman, he had grown weary of the city's clamor and throngs, opting for the solitude of this modest dwelling, enveloped by sprawling fields and serene woodlands. His days were typically peaceful, though a peculiar loneliness would sometimes creep in, especially at night. This particular evening was one such occasion. The air was crisp, and Jasper had just concluded his supper. He was about to settle into his worn armchair with a book when a curious flickering light beyond the window caught his attention. It emanated from his backyard, where the trees cast long, unsettling shadows beneath the moonlight. Intrigued, Jasper donned his old jacket and retrieved a flashlight. As he ventured outside, the light in the sky intensified, drifting towards the earth like a falling star meant solely for him. However, stars didn't behave in such a manner, nor did they typically land in backyards. Jasper's curiosity morphed into unease, yet he continued his approach towards the light, his grip tightening around the flashlight. Then he saw her. In the clearing near the trees, a figure huddled on the ground, shivering and enveloped in a tattered, shimmering cloak. Her skin emitted a soft, blue luminescence that seemed otherworldly. Jasper's heart pounded in his chest. He had never encountered anything like this. His mind raced through the countless strange tales he had read, but nothing could have prepared him for a real-life alien presence in his backyard. The woman glanced upwards, their gazes meeting. Her eyes were large and luminous, almost glowing. She appeared frightened and weary, and Jasper felt an unexpected urge to offer assistance. Cautiously, he took a step forward, then another. She didn't flee or cry out, instead, she appeared to relax slightly as he drew near. "Hello, can you understand me?" Jasper inquired gently, his voice soft. The alien woman tilted her head, her expression a blend of confusion and exhaustion. She uttered a few words, but her voice was barely audible, and the language was unlike any Jasper had ever heard. Still, something in her tone conveyed a plea, a desperate need for help that Jasper recognized. He raised his hands to demonstrate his peaceful intentions. "It's all right, you're safe here." "Let me help you," he assured her, hoping she would grasp the kindness in his tone, if not the words themselves. The woman hesitated, glancing around nervously as if anticipating someone's watchful gaze. Then, slowly, she extended a hand towards him. Her fingers were slender and faintly luminous. When their hands touched, her skin felt warm, like the gentle caress of sunlight. Jasper's heart softened. This alien, despite originating from another world, seemed so human. She was scared, cold, and alone, just like any lost individual might be. "Come inside, it's warm there," Jasper offered, gesturing towards his house. To his relief, she nodded and followed him. As they returned to his house, Jasper kept glancing over his shoulder, half expecting someone or something to emerge from the woods to claim her. But there was nothing, just the tranquility of the night, the distant stars, and this enigmatic visitor by his side. Inside, Jasper guided her to the old sofa. She surveyed the room with wide eyes, examining everything as if it were all magical. Noticing her shivering, Jasper fetched a blanket and draped it over her shoulders. She seemed surprised by the soft fabric, but soon clutched it tightly, her body relaxing into the warmth. In the kitchen, Jasper prepared a cup of tea, uncertain if she would appreciate it, but wanting to offer something. When he presented it to her, she hesitated before accepting the cup with both hands. She took a sip, and her eyes brightened as if she had just experienced something extraordinary. Jasper chuckled softly, feeling a spark of joy. For years, he had lived alone, with no one to share his modest home. Now, he was serving tea to an alien woman, and somehow it felt perfectly natural. They attempted to communicate, each speaking their native tongue, but their words were lost on each other. Still, they persisted, using gestures and expressions. She pointed to herself and uttered, "Lyra." Jasper repeated her name, and she nodded, her face lighting up. Then Jasper pointed to himself and said, "Jasper." Lyra repeated his name, and he felt a peculiar warmth in his heart. They didn't comprehend each other's language, yet a subtle connection was forming between them. After some time, Jasper noticed her eyelids drooping. She had traveled far, he surmised, and needed rest. He guided her to a guest room and tucked her in, just as he had once done for his own children long ago. Lyra gazed up at him with gratitude in her eyes, and Jasper smiled back, feeling a sense of fulfillment. As he extinguished the light and left the room, Jasper couldn't help but wonder who, or what, might be searching for her. But tonight, he decided to postpone that worry. Tonight, he was simply a solitary old man who had found an unexpected companion. Ethan resided in a peaceful cottage on the outskirts of Ashwood. An elderly gentleman, he had grown tired of the city's hustle and bustle, choosing the solitude of this humble abode, surrounded by vast meadows and quiet forests. His days were generally tranquil, although a strange sense of isolation would occasionally creep in, particularly during the evenings. This particular night was one such instance. The air was cool, and Ethan had just finished his supper. He was about to settle into his favorite armchair with a novel when an odd flickering light outside his window caught his eye. It originated from his garden, where the trees cast long, mysterious shadows under the moonlight. Curious, Ethan put on his old cardigan and picked up a lantern. As he stepped outside, the light in the sky intensified, descending towards the earth like a shooting star intended just for him. But stars didn't usually act that way, nor did they land in gardens. Ethan's curiosity gave way to apprehension, but he continued towards the light, his hand tightening around the lantern. Then he saw her. In the small clearing by the trees, a figure sat huddled on the ground, trembling and wrapped in a torn, iridescent shawl. Her skin gave off a soft, azure glow that seemed unearthly. Ethan's heart pounded. He had never witnessed anything like it. His mind raced through the many fantastical stories he had encountered, yet nothing could have truly prepared him for a genuine extraterrestrial being in his garden. The woman looked up, their eyes meeting. Her eyes were large and luminous, practically shining. She looked scared and exhausted, and Ethan felt an unexpected impulse to help her. Carefully, he took one step forward, then another. She didn't run or shout, instead, she seemed to calm down a little as he got closer. "Hello, do you understand me?" Ethan asked softly, keeping his voice gentle. The alien woman tilted her head, her expression a mix of bewilderment and fatigue. She spoke a few words, but they were barely a whisper, and the language was unlike any Ethan had ever heard. Even so, her tone conveyed a plea, a clear need for assistance that Ethan understood. He raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "It's okay, you're safe. I won't hurt you," he reassured her, hoping she understood the kindness in his tone, if not his exact words. The woman hesitated, looking around nervously as if worried someone was watching. Then, slowly, she extended a hand toward him. Her fingers were long and delicately luminescent. As their hands touched, her skin felt strangely warm, like the gentle warmth of the sun. Ethan's heart went out to her. This alien, despite being from another world, seemed so fragile. She was afraid, cold, and alone, much like any lost soul. "Come inside, it's warmer in there," Ethan offered, pointing toward his house. To his relief, she nodded and walked with him. As they returned to the house, Ethan glanced back repeatedly, almost expecting someone or something to emerge from the trees. But there was nothing, just the stillness of the night, the faraway stars, and this mysterious visitor at his side. Once inside, Ethan led her to the comfortable sofa. She observed the room with wide, curious eyes, taking in everything as if it were all new and wondrous. Noticing her shivering, Ethan brought a throw and placed it around her shoulders. She seemed surprised by the soft material but soon snuggled into it, her body relaxing into the provided warmth. In the kitchen, Ethan prepared some herbal tea, unsure if she would like it but hoping it would offer some comfort. When he gave it to her, she hesitated before taking the cup in both hands. She took a small sip, and her eyes widened as if she had experienced something remarkable. Ethan smiled gently, feeling a touch of joy. For so long, he had lived alone, with no one to share his cozy home. Now, he was offering tea to an alien woman, and for some reason, it felt completely normal. They tried to communicate, each using their native language, but their words were meaningless to each other. Yet they persisted, using gestures and facial expressions. She pointed at herself and softly said, "Ilara." Ethan repeated her name, and she nodded, her expression brightening. Then Ethan pointed to himself and said, "Ethan." Ilara attempted to repeat his name, and he felt a peculiar sense of connection. They couldn't comprehend each other's words, but a quiet bond was forming between them. As time passed, Ethan noticed Ilara's eyelids getting heavy. She had traveled a great distance, he figured, and needed to rest. He showed her to a spare bedroom and made sure she was comfortable, just as he had done for his own children years ago. Ilara looked up at him with grateful eyes, and Ethan smiled back, feeling a sense of contentment. As he turned off the light and closed the door, Ethan couldn't help but wonder who, or what, might be looking for her. But for tonight, he decided to set that worry aside. Tonight, he was simply a lonely old man who had found an unexpected companion. Days turned into weeks as John and Ilara journeyed deeper into the wilderness, their bond solidifying with each shared experience. John taught Ilara how to identify edible plants and build sturdy shelters, while she, in turn, shared stories of her home world, a place of shimmering cities and advanced technology. One evening, as they sat by a crackling fire, Ilara revealed more about the danger she was fleeing. She explained that a powerful faction on her planet sought to exploit her people's knowledge and resources, hunting down those who resisted. It was a grim tale, and John felt a surge of protectiveness towards Ilara and her people. He vowed to help her in any way he could. One crisp morning, as they prepared to break camp, the distant hum of an engine sliced through the quiet of the forest. John recognized the sound instantly. The hunters had found them. Panic surged through him, but he forced himself to remain calm, knowing Ilara depended on him. They packed their meager belongings and fled, John leading the way through the tangled undergrowth. The hum grew louder, closer, and John knew they had to find a place to hide. He spotted a narrow crevice in a rocky outcrop and pushed Ilara inside, squeezing in after her just as the ship descended, its shadow engulfing the forest. They waited, breathless and silent, as the ship hovered overhead, its searchlights probing the trees. John could hear the muffled sounds of the hunters moving through the underbrush, their voices harsh and alien. He held Ilara close, whispering reassurances, though his own heart pounded with fear. After what felt like an eternity, the ship began to ascend, its hum fading into the distance. They had escaped, for now. Emerging from their hiding place, they knew they couldn't stay in the area any longer. They needed a new plan, a way to evade their pursuers for good. Ilara suggested seeking out an ancient teleportation device hidden deep within the mountains, a device that could transport them to a remote region of the planet, far from the reach of the hunters. It was a dangerous gamble, but their only hope. Their journey to the mountains was arduous, fraught with peril. They encountered treacherous terrain, wild animals, and the ever-present threat of the hunters. But through it all, their bond deepened. They relied on each other for strength and support, their friendship blossoming into something profound. One evening, as they rested beneath a canopy of stars, Ilara confided in John about her family, showing him holographic images of her loved ones. John saw the love and longing in her eyes and felt a deep empathy for her loss. He understood the importance of their mission, not just for Ilara, but for all those she held dear. Finally, after weeks of relentless travel, they reached the mountains. The teleportation device was located within a hidden cave, guarded by ancient symbols and cryptic warnings. Ilara deciphered the inscriptions, explaining that activating the device required a specific sequence of actions and a deep understanding of her people's history. John watched in awe as she performed the ritual, her voice resonating with ancient power. The air within the cave crackled with energy, and a shimmering portal opened before them, a gateway to another world. They had made it. They were ready to face the final chapter of their extraordinary journey. Days turned into weeks as John and Ilara journeyed deeper into the wilderness, their bond strengthening with each shared experience. John taught Ilara about edible plants and how to build sturdy shelters, while she, in turn, shared stories of her home world, a place of gleaming cities and advanced technology. One evening, as they sat by a crackling fire, Ilara revealed the true nature of the danger she was running from. She explained that a powerful group on her planet wanted to exploit her people's knowledge and resources, persecuting those who resisted. It was a sobering tale, and John felt a surge of protectiveness towards Ilara and her kind. He was determined to help her however he could. One crisp morning, as they prepared to break camp, a low hum cut through the quiet of the forest. John recognized the sound instantly. Her pursuers had found them. A wave of panic washed over him, but he forced himself to stay calm, knowing Ilara was relying on him. They quickly packed their few belongings and ran, John leading the way through the dense undergrowth. The hum grew louder, closer, and John knew they had to find a place to hide. He spotted a narrow opening in a rocky wall and pushed Ilara inside, squeezing in after her just as the ship descended, its shadow falling over them. They waited, breathless and silent, as the ship hovered overhead, searchlights scanning the trees. John could hear the muffled sounds of those searching moving through the underbrush, their voices harsh and alien. He held Ilara close, whispering reassurances, though his own heart pounded with fear. After what seemed like forever, the ship began to ascend, the hum fading into the distance. They had evaded them, for now. Emerging from their hiding place, they knew they couldn't stay in the area. They needed a new plan, a way to escape their pursuers permanently. Ilara suggested seeking out an ancient device hidden deep within the mountains, a device that could transport them to a remote part of the planet, far from the reach of those who hunted her. It was a risky plan, but their only hope. The journey to the mountains was arduous, full of dangers. They navigated treacherous terrain, encountered wild animals, and faced the constant threat of being found. But their shared experiences only deepened their connection. They relied on each other for support and encouragement, their friendship blossoming into something deeper. One evening, resting under a blanket of stars, Ilara shared intimate details about her family, showing John holographic images of her loved ones. John saw the love and longing in her eyes and felt a profound empathy for her. He understood the weight of their mission, not just for Ilara, but for everyone she cared about. Finally, after weeks of difficult travel, they reached the mountains. The device was located inside a hidden cave, guarded by ancient symbols and cryptic warnings. Ilara deciphered the inscriptions, explaining that activating the device required a specific series of actions and a deep understanding of her people's history. John watched in awe as she performed the ritual, her voice filled with ancient power. The air within the cave crackled with energy, and a shimmering gateway opened before them, a portal to another place. They had made it. They were ready to face the final stage of their incredible journey. The ship shuddered gently as it broke through the atmosphere of Ilara's home world. John gazed out of the viewport, mesmerized by the swirling colors of the alien sky. Below, a landscape of shimmering cities and lush, vibrant vegetation unfolded. It was a sight unlike anything he had ever witnessed, a breathtaking panorama of alien beauty. Ilara, seated beside him, pointed out landmarks, a sparkling river that wound through a crystalline forest, a towering mountain range that pierced the multi-hued sky. Her voice, usually soft, was filled with a joyous excitement that was infectious. John, despite his apprehension, couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder. Their landing was smooth and uneventful. The ship settled onto a platform in the heart of a bustling city. As the doors hissed open, Ilara took John's hand, her touch reassuring. Stepping out onto the platform, John was greeted by a scene of organized chaos. Alien beings of all shapes and sizes moved with purpose, their clothing vibrant and diverse. The air hummed with a low, melodic thrum, the sound of advanced technology at work. Ilara led him through the crowds, her hand gripping his tightly. He felt a little overwhelmed, but her presence was a comforting anchor in the unfamiliar environment. They reached a large, circular building, its exterior shimmering with an iridescent sheen. Inside, they were greeted by a group of Ilara's people. They were a diverse group, some tall and slender, others short and stocky, but they all shared the same warm, welcoming expressions. They spoke in rapid, melodic tones, a language John didn't understand, but their gestures and smiles conveyed a clear message of acceptance. Ilara introduced John, explaining his role in her escape and his willingness to help. The group listened intently, their eyes filled with gratitude and respect. One of them, a tall, regal-looking being, stepped forward and placed a hand on John's shoulder. It was a gesture of thanks, a silent acknowledgement of his bravery. Ilara then led John to a comfortable chamber within the building. It was a simple room, but filled with advanced technology that fascinated him. She explained that this would be his temporary home, a place where he could rest and acclimate to their world. Over the next few days, Ilara and her people worked tirelessly to prepare for the confrontation with the ruling faction. John, despite not understanding their language, observed their dedication and resolve. He watched as they strategized, their holographic displays flashing with complex diagrams and equations. He saw the determination in their eyes, the unwavering commitment to their cause. One evening, Ilara sat with John, explaining the situation in more detail. Using a translator device, she described the oppressive regime, their exploitation of her people, and their relentless pursuit of those who resisted. She spoke of the importance of freedom, the right to live without fear and oppression. John listened, his heart filled with empathy. He understood the value of freedom, the importance of standing up for what is right. He reaffirmed his commitment to help, his voice firm and resolute. The day of the confrontation arrived. Ilara and her people gathered, their faces a mixture of apprehension and determination. John stood among them, his hand resting on the hilt of a small energy weapon Ilara had given him. He didn't know how to use it, but he was ready to stand with them, to fight for their freedom. The confrontation took place in a large, open plaza. The ruling faction arrived in force, their armored figures a stark contrast to the peaceful citizens gathered in the plaza. Tension filled the air, thick and suffocating. Ilara stepped forward, her voice amplified by a device on her wrist. She spoke passionately, her words echoing through the plaza. She called for an end to the oppression, a return to freedom and justice. The ruling faction responded with threats and intimidation, but Ilara and her people stood firm. They had chosen to resist, to fight for their future. And as the tension reached its breaking point, John, the old man from a quiet world, stood with them, ready to face the unknown, ready to fight for a cause he believed in. He was no longer just a lonely old man. He was a warrior, a friend, a champion of freedom. And in that moment, he knew that his life, once quiet and uneventful, had found its true purpose.